Hello, everyone, and welcome to the UCL M&A Group's brand new Diversity and Inclusion Week. My name is Nicola, and I'm the head of Speaker Relations at the group, and alongside me is Charlotte, our Speaker Relations Executive. Following the huge success of our M&A Monday series, we felt obligated to address the importance of the diversity and inclusion topic within the investment banking industry as a society with the largest social media presence in the UK. Therefore, during this 7-day event, you can expect interviews with heads of diversity and inclusion of leading investment banks, M&A advisors, and panel events, which will help students coming from diverse backgrounds break out into the industry.
We are absolutely delighted to have Sarah Fennell with us today. Sarah studied politics at the University of York. Upon graduating, she started her career at HSBC, where she was involved in a number of roles until she acted as the role of head of diversity and inclusion. She then worked at Moody's and is now head of EMEA diversity and inclusion at Macquarie, where she has created a strategy and has been involved in a number of diversity and inclusion initiatives. How are you doing today, Sarah?
Hi, I'm good. Thank you for having me.
So for the first question, we just wanted to touch upon your earlier career. So you worked in a number of roles at HSBC prior to working within Diversity and Inclusion Group. So what has driven you to pursue a career with diversity and inclusion specifically?
I think the stuff that I liked about diversity was the stuff I liked about my previous job. I really liked learning. I worked in international trade, strategy, insurance strategy, worked with clients, and I really loved getting to know their problems and how to fix them. And so I think that people side of things was very relevant for me in diversity and inclusion. But when I was at university, I was the LGBT officer, and I had a lot of advice. Oh, don't tell anyone that you were the LGBT officer because they won't want to hire you because they'll think you're an angry feminist lesbian. But that was so not true. It was the stuff that I'd done at university that really made me different than everyone else. So I could talk about leading campaigns. Like we won an award from the National Union of Students. That's the stuff that makes you stand apart. Like somebody who just studied all day, never spoke to anyone and got a first is a much less attractive candidate because we don't want you to just sit on your own when you come to work. So so I did that. I joined the diversity groups when I was at HSBC, and then I became the chair of the LGBT employee network group, Pride. And we were in the Stonewall Index, and so I wrote a strategy for how the bank could improve and be more LGBT inclusive. And the CEO agreed and said, yeah, you're right, we need to set up a role. And then after a few interviews, they let me do it full time. So it's the best job. I love it. It's definitely where I'm meant to be.
Perfect. Thank you on that. And just to follow up, as someone who has worked within the area of diversity and inclusion for a number of years now, how do you feel that the banks have improved in this area, and has there been a significant change in focus?
I think there has. I mean, I started in HSBC in 2005 before I went back to uni to do politics. And the CEO at the time, there was a video, and he apologized for being the male CEO and that all the managers were men. And he said, hopefully in 15 years' time, it won't be as bad. And it was pretty unimaginable at the time that it would change, but I think it has changed more than we realize. And now I work for Macquarie, and our CEO, our global CEO, Shamara, is obviously a really amazing female CEO. So I think that's changed. But I think what's really changed is that we didn't really talk about diversity 15 years ago. Like he talked about that, but that was kind of it. They didn't do anything. And now the regulator is pushing all financial institutions to be diverse. The head of the FCA is super keen to ensure that people have good conduct, and that includes creating diverse and inclusive firms. Investors are looking for it. So I just think it's a concept, even over the last 7 years. We don't have to, I never have to explain to my leaders why diversity is important. I just have to explain what we need to do. And I think that's a huge shift.
Definitely agree on that. And just to expand a bit more on the diversity and inclusion within Macquarie, the focus over there has been on disability, ethnicity, gender, intersectionality, LGBTQI+, neurodiversity, and social mobility. So out of these areas, Which one do you think still needs more work on?
I think they all need more, to be honest. I think intersectionality is probably the bit that's most exciting and also the bit that needs the most work. I think quite often when we talk about gender, for example, we talk about white women who have kids and are straight and are not disabled. But you're not just, I'm not just a woman. I have all these other elements of myself. And I think once you understand that and you start looking at the different barriers the different groups face and the different experiences that different groups are facing, then you can design programs that will actually have more of an impact and are more interesting as well. I don't just want to work with, 50-50 women who look and talk like me. I want to work with a much broader stretch of the population. So we need to do everything, but it's fun. We've got lots of work to do.
And just kind of to follow up on that, so on your LinkedIn, you mentioned that you helped create the regional diversity and inclusion strategy for Macquarie. And so can you please tell us more about this strategy and the impact that it's had?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I undersold myself on LinkedIn a little bit. I should probably rewrite it. I wrote the strategy, so I write it. I work for, I jointly report to our regional CEO and head of HR. So obviously they played a really huge role in that, but ultimately I'm the one that writes the strategy, but then the regional committee is accountable for it because they're the ones that own the culture and need to make the change. So to create the strategy is really around looking at what does our data tell us, where are the issues, what do our people tell us. So I spent 3 months interviewing people all over the company to ask, what's your experience, what's good, what's bad, like what do we need to do. And then so the key focuses for us really, number one is creating equity, so changing our systems and our processes to make sure that the ability for bias to negatively impact them is totally limited, and that's really been shown to be the most effective thing that we can do. And then in terms of, that might include changing the way that we recruit. We've brought in new scoring processes to make sure that it's as rigorous and fair and equitable as it can be. We've brought in a diversity academy. So we've got one starting in September. We've got 120 people will join us to learn new skills and help them succeed in the interview process and beyond, to change the diversity of that early careers level. And all kinds of other fun stuff, working with the global HR team, transforming just the full employee life cycle. So from when you join to when you leave. And then the second part is empowering everybody. So I already said that inclusion is accountable, the executive team is accountable, but actually everybody has an impact on their team, from the most junior to the most senior person. And so although you can tell people, you should be inclusive in your team, people don't necessarily know what that means. And so my job is really about empowering people to get involved from their team level to make a difference, or in one of our employee network groups. So we've got 5 employee network groups on the topics that you just mentioned. And they do really great events, including development events, to help people improve in their careers. And I've definitely benefited from those events throughout my career. So I'm really excited to work with our ENGs. And as you can see, it's Pride Month at Macquarie at the moment. We celebrate from the middle of June to the middle of July. So we've got a 60-foot version of this flag hanging up in the office at the moment. That was pretty exciting when I got to go in earlier this week to go see it in person.
That sounds really amazing, and it's clear that you've been involved in like a lot of amazing work, and you've really had an impact on Macquarie already. And so, what is kind of like your vision for diversity and inclusion at Macquarie?
So I guess it's to empower everybody to succeed at Macquarie and to do their best work. So we want to make sure that we have a really equitable firm where everyone can succeed, and our purpose as a company is to empower people That's what we do from the work, the assets that we have, and I think that's really reflected in the diversity vision as well.
Thank you for that. And so, other than implementing your strategy, what other steps has Macquarie taken or is planning to take to retain a diverse and inclusive workforce, especially at a managerial level?
So it really begins from day -7. The recruitment, I already talked about changing the recruitment process, but when you join, we assign you a buddy a week out so that you know you've got somebody to really help you integrate and feel at home. And we give you the chance as well to ask for an additional buddy. So it might be as a woman that you want to talk to other women in a team like yours. And then we talked a lot about empowering. So following the murder of George Floyd, we put a lot of structure in place and learning really in depth. Like the regional leadership team and their leadership teams all did 5 different 90-minute sessions on race fluency. So to learn, how do you lead? Because actually the structure and the strategy that would work for career success for a white man isn't the same. And women get treated differently. So we need to make sure that our leaders understand how to help people succeed, because not everybody's coming from the same starting point. So we need to help level that playing field. And then we've got all kinds of other fun stuff going on. So to make sure that the senior manager levels are diverse, we have a sponsorship program for groups that have been historically underrepresented at that level. So they get assigned a sponsor and then collectively agree actions that not just the sponsee will take, but also the sponsor will take to help them advance their career and to make sure that they get opportunities. So we really have to build in those kind of systems to make sure that everyone has fair opportunities. And then I think I mentioned our employee network groups, but they're such a great tool for creating networks across the company. You get sucked into your day job. So you might be sat in CGM and you'll never be speaking to somebody in Macquarie Capital, but then you come together in the employee network groups, and that really makes business opportunities happen and personal networking. So there's so much going on. I could talk to you for far more than you have video available, but those are some of the things that we're excited about right now.
Well, that sounds really exciting. And now just going back to the strategy a bit, what was the most challenging aspect of implementing your strategy?
Time, I think. So with any hour, you could do 20 different things that would all be really great. And so it's looking back at the vision and what are we trying to achieve, and then prioritizing where are you going to spend the time, because you can do 20 things not very well, or you can do 5 things that will really have an impact, but the other 15 ideas aren't bad. So it's sometimes hard to say no to something that you think is a really good idea, but it's just not the right idea for now.
Yeah, that makes sense. And so just in terms of diversity and inclusion, what do you think are the biggest challenges for firms like Macquarie, and which ones are they facing nowadays?
I think mental health is the big concern of everybody. We've all been, and I think it more than we do. We've had a pretty horrendous 16 months of being locked in our houses, and in your case sent home and then coming back, and sent home and coming back. And some people have been living totally alone, some people have been living in shared housing. So how do we make sure that people feel safe when we're coming back to the office? How do we make sure that we create a different way of working? We don't want to just go back to where it was. Like, clearly working at home works. We had one of our most profitable years ever. So we're going back into a hybrid working environment. So people will spend some time at home and some time in the office once it's safe to do so later on in the year. But I think, it's had an impact. And so we've got mental well-being programs, we've got, podcasts, we've got healthy eating programs, we've got all kinds of support, employee assistance program. Everyone can access counselling 24/7. And we know that when we get back to the office, that people aren't magically going to be okay. So it's really going to be a long-term focus for us of making sure that everybody is supported and that managers check in on people. And of course, if you are a carer, you've had more stress than other people, and you know, if you're from a community where you've lost a lot of family members, that adds different mental health concerns. So it's really, I think the focus is getting to know people, and keeping our staff supported.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. And now we're actually on to our last question already. And so many of the members of the UCL M&A group come from underrepresented backgrounds within finance, for example. And given your plethora of experience, what advice would you give to them?
So I have a mentee as part of one of our programs, and she's just started an internship last week. And I think imposter syndrome was probably her biggest, and definitely my biggest. Like, I did not know investment banks existed until I was probably 21. And I remember sitting in the interview with the CEO being like, whoa, how did this happen? And so I think, particularly if you come from a background where it's not expected for you to go into finance, you might feel that you don't belong, and sometimes other people who are insecure try to feel more secure by making you feel like you don't belong. But just know that if you made it, you deserve to be there, and tell yourself that there is a reason that they employed you, and it's because they want you to bring your own viewpoint. We don't want 20 people who are just the same. We need people with different ways of looking at the world, because if everybody looks at a thing in the same way, you won't even see the problem sometimes. So we need that, those different viewpoints. So, and how do you actually combat imposter syndrome? I think keep telling yourself that you deserve to be there. And then when you do good things, write them down so that you can look back. So if you have a terrible day, you can look back and go, oh, actually, I've achieved loads that I'd forgotten about, because it's really easy to focus on the one bad thing and not the 10 great things. And then I think the hardest part for a lot of people, and it's countercultural for a lot of people, is you've got to tell other people when you do good things, because your manager's going to be busy and stressed. And as much as they want to be a good manager, they're not always going to succeed, and they're not always going to know that you did something great unless you tell them. So try and find a way to make sure that you share your success, and share other people's success, because if you are nervous about sharing your own, and you get into a habit of sharing other people's, then they'll do that for you, and you create that culture, really. And then I think join the employee network groups. Like, they really exist to connect you and to create safe spaces and to help you talk to people who've probably been through a lot of what you're going through. And I remember joining, you know, the women's network and the LGBT network, and just really finding people who helped me to succeed, and told me the secrets and the unwritten rules of the workplace. And so that's just invaluable, and it helps you be better at your job and have more fun at work. So join the employee network groups.
Yes, make sure to make use of that advice. But I think this is it from us today. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak to us today. I thought it was really insightful, and everything that you mentioned, from your incentives to like how Macquarie focuses on empowering everyone, is incredibly insightful, and I'm sure all of our viewers will really appreciate it.
Well, thank you again for having me, and good luck with finding the right job. Actually, that's my one final tip. Remember that you're interviewing them as well. Don't go work somewhere that you don't feel that you can succeed. Go somewhere else.
Perfect. Thank you very much again. And to our viewers, please do consider liking this video and subscribing to our channel.